All right. So for this video, we're going to go through the bulk of the script. So the last one was about the introduction. The next one's going to be about going over the numbers and closing. This one's going to be about pretty much everything in between, right? And I'm going to try to go through. This one might take a little longer because obviously it's the majority of the script, the majority of the words. But I'm going to try to just focus and stop and go over the places where you typically might get objections and just the more crucial, important parts. Um, Recording already. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. This one we just really need the script for. All right, make this big, beautiful. I don't like that. Let's do one page. All right, so with here, we're gonna pretend like, all right, perfect, going through the script with somebody. And this is so we're again, this is after the introduction. So they say, yes, I am looking to get the burial coverage, or you went over the one of the questions we went over in the last video, and they're like, oh yeah, I am looking to add additional coverage. Yes, like, all right, perfect. So and then typically, so we're starting right here, right? So we're digging into the why. This is the most important part of the entire conversation. The entire conversation. So and this is how I'm going to say it. So, God forbid, if you were to pass away, who would be the beneficiary that would be responsible for paying for the funeral and picking up all the pieces for you tomorrow, sir? I'll say, I'm just going to say my daughter. Be like, oh, okay, your daughter. What's her name? Amanda. Okay, got it. And that's Amanda, correct? All right, perfect. If you don't know how to you don't know how to spell the name, it's a weird name. Just ask for the spelling. All right, got it. And then would she be in a financial position to cover a funeral, or is that why you were looking into this, sir? And then wait and see what they say, right? A lot of times right here they're going to say something like, oh, she could cover it, and be like, oh, okay, awesome, sir, very glad she could be able to do that. You're probably like most veterans that I talk to, though, where even if your daughter or your spouse could afford it, you probably just wanted to have something in place to cover that cost for them. That way they didn't have to dip into savings or, raise money or be burdened by any expenses. Is that correct? Yes, sir. I completely understand. That's the same reason that most veterans send in these requests, just so their loved ones aren't burdened with any expenses. And then if it's their spouse, I'm going to ask another follow up question like this. Like, with your guys' income, are you kind of like the primary breadwinner as far as like the benefits of Social Security and the income from the house? Okay. Yeah. So I'm assuming then if you do pass away or whenever that day does come, she's going to lose a good bit of your income. So you also just wanted to make sure she had the money put aside to cover that. That way she wasn't dealing with the stress of the house bills and just living on top of paying for the funeral. Is that correct? Yeah. And then obviously there's the emotional toll of losing you. And the last thing we want anybody to have to do is, have to be paying for a big expense out of pocket while dealing with all the other stuff. You know what I mean, sir? Yeah. And then have you had to pay? And these are just all additional questions you can ask right here to build the why. Again, the script is a guide, not a cage. If you want to be able to go off script and build the why as much as possible, I'm definitely still lazy about this all the time. I'll ask a couple questions, then move on. With the kids, you can ask about, or your daughter Amanda, she'd be paying for this. Okay. Would she be in a position to cover it? Yes, no, whatever. I got it. Does Amanda have kids? She have a family? Yeah, I'm sure she's got her hands full as it is then, huh? You probably don't want her having to worry about this, right? Something like that, right? And like, oh yeah, she's got her hands full. And this could backfire a little bit, if they're like, oh, well, she's loaded or her husband's a millionaire, like whatever, something like that. But like, okay, yeah, I totally understand. And you probably just didn't want it to fall a burden on them though, right? You didn't want to be a pain from the grave. I mean, I won't really say that, but it's all just about asking the proper questions about their beneficiary's situation to figure out and to build that pain and to build the why, right? Again, if you're getting social objections, you're getting banking objections, you're getting the I want to think about it, it's because you screwed up right here and you didn't build enough of a why and they don't really feel like they need it. That's what it is. It could be they don't trust you and they don't want to give you their social, but it's really most likely they don't feel like they need it and they just don't want it. So building the why is huge. So again, you want to ask other questions here. There's a million videos you can look up online on good questions to ask about final expense. Just search on YouTube, final expense life insurance, how to build the why. Extra questions to ask. You can go over this for an hour, 2 hours, and there's a tons of videos to do that. And you need to have a bunch of questions in your arsenal. I find it easiest to just ask about their situation and then what their beneficiary situation is. If it's one of their kids, Ask about their kids. Do they have kids? What's their situation like? What do they do for work? How are they with money? That sort of thing, right? And if it's their spouse, it's going to be you can talk about them losing the income, or they might just say, yeah, that she probably wouldn't be able to cover it. That's why I'm looking into this. But like, perfect. I completely understand. That's the same reason most veterans send in these requests, just so their loved ones are not burdened with that expense, right? And but again, you're always just going to build the why, ask some more questions here to build that pain and make them feel like they really need it subconsciously. And you're doing so I'm assuming you're like most veterans though, where even if your wife could afford it, you just wanted to have a policy in place that covers that cost. That way she doesn't have to worry about anything whenever that time comes, and she gets a check instead of having to pay, or she's able to receive a check instead of having to write a check. Is that kind of the case, sir? All right, perfect. Yeah, most veterans I talk to the exact same way. Their wife could afford it if need be, but they'd just rather her not have to worry about that on top of all the other things she's going to have to figure out and deal with. Yes, sir. And then, all right, so let's move to the next part. But again, could go over this forever. This is the most important piece. Ask questions about their beneficiary situation to build the why. Focus on this. Spend 5 minutes on this if you can, right? Um, and then, have you thought about whether you wanted to be buried or cremated one day? I'm going to say buried. Let's do the burial thing first. Buried, okay. And do you know what burials typically cost nowadays? So you're going to guess, I don't know, or five. Sometimes they'll say 5 grand. Usually they say about 10 grand. Like, yep. So it's usually anywhere from ten to $15,000. It just really depends on the overall fanciness of the service, the opening or closing, and the type of casket and overall level of celebration that the family goes with. Okay. And then cremation. You know what cremation costs nowadays? You're gonna be cremated. All right. Yep. So it is cheaper than burial. Cremations are typically anywhere from, I'll say sometimes 4 to 7 or 5 to 7, depending on their age, but anywhere from 5 to 7,000. And they can be more. It just really depends on the overall fanciness of the service and the type of celebration and urn that the family goes with. And another line I sometimes use right here is I'll say, well, and they'll be like, oh, it's expensive. Like, yes, sir. I mean, well, at the end of the day, sir, funeral homes are businesses too, and they're in it to make money. If you want to spend 30 grand on a funeral, I guarantee you they will let you, make a joke like that because it's true. And then after that, they know how much it costs. Like, all right. And then besides what I help you with today, sir, do you have any existing life insurance policies that are already in place, or would this be the first one for you? And then again, sometimes in the introduction, they won't mention that they already have coverage. They'll just go along with it and be like, yeah, whatever. And they'll be like, oh, no, but like, oh, actually have some coverage in place. And you always want to ask this question because one, it's very assumptive that we're getting this done today. And then two, you're figuring out if they already have policies in place so you don't get that objection at the very end. Before I started saying this, I can't tell you how many times, sometimes you'll say it and they'll say no, and then you'll still get the I have coverage objection at the end because people don't listen half the time. That's again why you got to engage with these people, why you got to have a real conversation, why you got to build rapport. But if they have coverage, like they have 10 grand, then you want to ask that, like we did the introduction video, you want to ask that proper question, right? So be like, okay, perfect. You have a policy in place now. Okay. How much coverage do you have? 10,000. Okay. Gotcha, sir. Thanks for letting me know. And it looks like I do see that on your file here. So then with this request, you're probably just looking to add an additional like 8 to 15 or 20,000 extra just to make sure that all of the burial costs are covered since they have gone up in price, and also leave some extra money behind. Is that correct? All right, perfect. And then also another way to build the why here, just randomly thought of this, you can ask if they've lost anybody in their life, or if they've had to pay for a funeral, they know anybody that's had to pay for a funeral. If they've lost anybody in their life recently, old people usually have, right? So then you can be like, okay. And then whenever they passed away, did he have coverage, or did his family have to come out of pocket for that? Oh, what did that look like for them? Did they have to start a GoFundMe? Did they have to raise debt? Like, what did they have to do? Were they able to make it? Like just build the pain like that, right? Using stories. And then this section right here, I don't read 100% of the time. I feel like it can kind of kill the conversation because it lets them know that it's going to be a longer combo, right? But I'm not saying it's bad, and there's killers who read this every time, right? So let's just say we're going to read it, right? I'll always read it if I feel like they're not really listening, or I feel like they might be busy, just to make sure I'm not wasting my time. So what we'll do is we'll spend about a minute or so on yourself and the financial situation, make sure everything is affordable and within the budget. And typically we don't have any problems because these are all designed for veterans on a fixed income, whether it's Social Security or disability. And then I'll ask you some health questions. And that's just going to help me navigate which one of the 26 veteran approved carriers would most likely give you the approval today. Does that make sense? All right, perfect. And I know it says VA right here. I need to change this. I don't ever say the word VA. I mean, sure, sometimes it slips out, but I'm always going to say veterans, veterans benefits, FFL. Like, don't say you're with the VA because you are not with the Veterans Affairs, right? If you ever get asked that, say no, or say, well, you shouldn't just be like no. You should say something like this, like, no, sir. So I'm a contracted medical underwriter. What the veterans here do is they partner with 26 different carriers, companies that you've heard of, like Mutual of Omaha, American General, American Amicable, CVS, Transamerica. And then based on your age and your medical conditions, we're able to find you the veteran approved carrier that's going to give you the most coverage for the lowest monthly rate. And we get veterans discounts on all of the carriers. Does that make sense, sir? Okay, got it. And then continue, right? Just redirect. So don't, I mean, I kind of will answer it in a roundabout way. I'm not going to be like, no, I don't work for the VA. I am a independent insurance agent. Like, I'm not going to say that, but I'm never going to tell somebody I work for the government, I work for the VA, because I don't, right? Tell them, no, I'm a medical underwriter. I know I'm a contracted, a licensed agent here to help you find the best rate out of the 26 veteran approved carriers, right? Use vague language if you want to, just don't say you work for the government because you don't. And then next thing here is this part. So it's the income. So it's like, all right, perfect. And how I lead into this, instead of being like, you can say, so this takes you to the client suitability sheet. I typically just say, all right. And then as far as your current situation goes, are you currently working, retired, or disabled? Great opportunity for a joke right here. Every time they say retired, oh, shoot, man, I can't wait to say that one day myself, Mr. Bob. You know, like, oh yeah, it's not as fun as you think it is. Like, what? Don't play any golf, drinking too much chicken noodle soup. That's kind of an edgy joke. I wouldn't say that to everybody, but I'll say that sometimes. Be like, oh man, what? You're not playing golf and drinking chicken noodle soup all day, kicking your feet up? That sounds great to me. Or like something like that, you know. They'll just talk to him about it. Oh, what'd you do for work after you the military? What do you do before you retired? What was your last job? How long you been retired for? Great, awesome, cool. If disabled, I'll typically, or they're like, I'm retired and disabled. Then I'll just go to the retirement joke, but they're like, oh, I'm disabled. I'll be like, oh, well, thank you so much for your service. Bless your heart. And we really appreciate what you did for this country. You know, something like that. Like, all right. And then what would you say you typically bring in per month, just to the ballpark? And I'm having like just to the ballpark, like a curious little tone there, right? And then if it's over, for me, I know it says 2K on the script. I think that's totally fine to keep it simple. But for me, if it's over $3,000, and it kind of depends on the person. Like, once you get a feel for this, you can really kind of tell just by talking to somebody who's like pretty low income and who's not. I don't know how to explain it, but if they make less than $3,000 a month household, I'm going to ask, okay, and at the end of the month, once you pay the bills, utilities, and do any fun things you like to do, what would you say that you're typically left over with in a normal month? And then let them tell you, and then you know how much, not to quote them over that realistically. Like if they say they have $200 at the end of the month, I'm not going to quote them a $200, $300, $400 policy. They can't afford it. But then they're like, oh, I got $1,000 left over at the end of the month. And like, you're like, all right. Or they're like, oh, I got $2,000 or $3,000 left over at the end of the month. They make $5,000 a month. Like, you can quote this person a little bit higher and get away with a bigger policy and help them and make more money yourself. Right. Should I talk about quoting a lot in this video? Yeah, we'll do it at the end. All right. And then, yeah, so pretty simple. Just ask how much they make and then what they have left over at the end of each month. Just ask it in a casual way. And if they ever ask you weird, like, why do you need to know that? Be like, well, sir, I'm just supposed to ask that to make sure that this is comfortable for you. Obviously, it does have to be within the budget, even though it is a very discounted rate. Obviously, it does have to be, within your budget. So we got to make sure it's comfortable for you. And sometimes there's like if they're a hard ass about it, like, well, I can just leave that blank, sir. Totally fine. We'll move right on. Just, move on. And then after that, I'm like, all right, so there are 2 additional discounts that you may qualify for on top of being a veteran. The first being, are you a smoker or a non-smoker? It's usually non-smoker, 95% of the time, right? It's like non-smoker. All right, perfect. So you qualify for the non-smoking rate. Just promise me you're not going to start smoking anytime soon. Okay, Mr. Bob? That typically will get a laugh. All right. And then say they say smoker. Ugh. Oh, Jesus, excuse me. If they smoke, right? Like, okay, gotcha. How long you been smoking? All right. You plan on quitting anytime in the next 3 years? And if they say yes or whatever, Americo will give you a Americo. They can smoke. You can admit to smoking, and it'll give them the non-smoking rate for 3 years, and it sends them a swab kit in 3 years. And if they've quit smoking, they keep the rate. They don't, it goes up, or they'll cancel the policy on them. So Americo is the best carrier, but Americo they also have to be fairly healthy. So Americo is the best carrier for smokers as long as they're fairly healthy. Um, and then typically I'm quoting the non-smoking rate, especially obviously if they're a non-smoker. And then if they are a smoker, it's America. And then for the second discount, this one's important right here. So I think the wording on how you ask this one right here is important, and you can sketch people out if you don't ask it properly. And it's getting dark, so let me turn my lights on. And then for the second discount, they do give you a little bit of an additional discount for using a veterans partnered bank. Do you use a normal federal bank or a military branch credit union? And then let them respond, obviously. And they'll say, so typically they're going to say something like, oh, just a normal bank. Or they might just be like, oh, I use Navy Federal, or I use USAA. Or if they say I might use a military bank, like, all right, which one? Navy Federal, USAA. If they say, oh, just a normal bank, be like, okay. So like a federal bank, I'll see if that bank is on the state discount list. What's the name of the bank that you guys use? And every once in a while, you'll get pushback here and say, why do you need to know that? And what I say to that is, well, with these programs, sir, if another veteran has already used your bank, it saves them some money on the drafting. So they give you a little bit of a discount if another veteran has already used your bank for these programs. And 99% of the time, your bank will be on the discount list. So I'm able to get you a little bit cheaper of a rate if it's a veteran partnered bank. So what's the name of the bank that you use? Oh, I use Fifth Third Bank. Like, all right, perfect. And then you basically write down the bank name, and then you open that in the state of Ohio as well. All right, perfect. I don't even always ask that. I kind of assume they just opened it where they live. All right, perfect. Looks like that state or that bank is on the state discount list as well. And again, we're asking this question so that way when we get towards the banking at the end, we can pull up the routing number. All right, and then just a couple of quick health questions for you, Mr. Bob. For your medical needs, do you go to the VA or do you go to a civilian doctor? If they say VA, if they say civilian, or they say both, I'd be like, which one do you get most of your prescriptions through? Okay, got it. And obviously, if they go through the VA, not everything will be on their medical report typically. So a little bit higher chance of approval with certain things and medications they forgot about. So it's better if they go to the VA. If they go to a civilian doctor, you aren't going to be able to pull shit with carriers. You're going to have to get them approved for what they're actually medicated for and stuff like that. Not that you shouldn't do that anyways. I'm just saying. Because sometimes they forget they had a prescription from 4 years ago for something for gabapentin and for pain medication. They don't even think they don't even have neuropathy. And if they don't admit that in the health exam or the health questionnaire here, like how are you supposed to know? And then you go try to use Americo and then they get denied and you're like, what the heck? He told me he only had diabetes. So it's just important to know whether they go to the VA or civilian doctor so you know which carrier to quote with, right? And then in the last 5 years, have you had any heart attacks, heart failure, strokes, TIA, or stents? No? Yeah. If they say, I'm just going to say they say yes to every question here so I can ask the follow-up questions for this example. Yes. Heart attack 2 years ago. Okay. How you doing now, sir? And always care about these people, right? Ask follow-up questions about their fucking illnesses or their issues. Are you currently on any blood thinners or heart medications like Plavix, Eliquis, warfarin, nitroglycerin? Eliquis is the most common one for this. Okay, got it. Notate this down. Jot it all down. And then any cancer in the last 5 years? Yeah. What kind? Prostate cancer? How long you been in remission for? Oh, you still have it. Are you stage 1, stage 2? Do you know where you're at with it, sir? Or how long you been in remission for? Okay, wonderful. Corbridge, we'll accept prostate cancer. I don't think America might. I don't think America will. Corbridge will, Ethos will, a bunch of them will accept prostate cancer. All right, got it. Any diabetes, sir? Yeah. Okay. Are you taking metformin or insulin? Okay. Any neuropathy? A lot of people don't know what neuropathy is. And they say, what's that? I'll make a joke. Be like, well, if you don't know what it is, you probably don't have it. So that's a good thing. But it just means like nerve issues in the hands and feet where you have a really bad tingling or burning sensation. You would probably be taking, if they say yes, but okay, do you take gabapentin? Okay, got it. Any high blood pressure? No, yes. Okay. Are you taking lisinopril, amlodipine, metoprolol, and there's two others that aren't here, losartan and hydrochlorothiazide and atenolol are the other three ones. And that's just something I learned through experience. So I'll kind of mention those sometimes. And it's building credibility when you're able to ask them about medications, right? You have high blood pressure. Okay, lisinopril. Let me know if anything sounds familiar. Lisinopril, amlodipine, losartan, hydrochlorothiazide, metoprolol, atenolol. Okay, got it. Yep, a lot of people on that nowadays. How's it working for you? Okay, good. Yeah, I've been on it for 30 years. All right, cool, whatever. Any breathing complications or COPD? Yes. Okay. Do you have oxygen or inhaler? Sometimes they call it albuterol. Okay, got it. Any anxiety or depression medication? Prozac, Seroquel. There's another common one called duloxetine. Okay. Any kidney or liver problems? Yes. You have kidney failure, dialysis, kidney disease. Okay. And then almost done here. Any hospitalizations in the last 2 years, in the last year that lasted for more than 2 days or so? No? Okay. God bless, sir. And then last health question for you. Roughly, what is your height and weight? And then 90% of the time, I'm not going to ask this, but if they're super, super healthy and they're young enough to qualify for an IUL and they want a bigger coverage amount, or even if they don't, and I know they're healthy enough, and I think they're healthy enough to qualify for an IUL, which for an IUL, they have to be really healthy, right? So if they pretty much have anything wrong with them, I don't quote an IUL because then you're just going to offer a way better rate than you can actually get them, and you're going to get denied and then trying to switch the whole life, and then you might lose a deal. So I'm typically only going to pitch IUL if they're extremely healthy. And if you're brand new and you're watching this video, don't even worry about this really. But if they're looking for a larger coverage amount and they're very healthy and you thinking, okay, I might be able to go IUL with this person, I'm going to ask something like this and say, okay, sir. And then in the last like 5 to 10 years, are there any medications, prescriptions, hospitalizations, illnesses, diseases, anything at all you can think of, sir? Because you want to know, because they might just be like, oh yeah, there's this, I don't even know what an example would be, but it might be like, you didn't ask about this, like, oh yeah, I had this medication, or they're like, oh yeah, I had a stroke 6 years ago, but you said 5 years. So just like you want to like double check before you quote an IUL. Like, all right, perfect, sir. So bear with me for 1 minute here. I'm going to go ahead and punch all this information into our veteran system and see what the best options available for you are. And then before we go over the packages, I'm going to explain, and I don't pause. I just keep going because I'm able to do the script and quote at the same time. So again, typically you're going to want to have the FEX quoter pulled up in a tab. We went over this in a different video, right? You're going to want to have the FEX quoter pulled up on one of your tabs and be ready to roll, right? So I'm like, while I'm reading this part, this is what I'm quoting, right? So I'm saying, all right, perfect, sir. So before we go over the packages, I'm just going to explain how the process works. So it's not like going to the local grocery store where you just see it, like it, and buy it. With this sort of thing, we still have to get you approved for it. And the carriers will look at what's called the Medical Information Bureau, or the MIB report, which is a compilation of your medical records, hospitalizations, and prescriptions over the last few years. So I typically can't give you the final decision on the spot because ultimately it is up to the carriers to approve you, which is why I spent a little bit of time on those health questions. Does that make sense, sir? All right, perfect. In this section, it's kind of a pullback and it's letting them know what's true. They do have to be approved, right? So, and then after this, it's credentials. So, and then perfect, sir, understood. All right. And then do you receive text messages on this phone? Is this a cell phone we're talking on? All right, perfect. So there is a new protocol here in the state where I just legally have to send you over a copy of my Department of Insurance license just so that you have it for your records. So in your text messages, you'll see two different images. The first one is going to be my state of California Department of Insurance license, which has my license number and all of my credentials from the state on there. Some of them on the insurance licenses, they even have like your address on there. And I'll say it even has the address of where I live. And then after that, sir, you're going to see my Veterans Benefits contact card, which contains my full name, my NPN number, which is like my employee social security number. And then there's a picture of my face on there as well, just so you can see the face behind the voice. And then, sometimes I'll ask him, like, did you see that? Did you see that came in? All right, perfect. Just want to make sure you saw that, sir. I don't always ask that, but just depending on the person, and if I feel like they're skeptical, I'll probably ask that. Um, if you don't have that state license yet, just say like, all right, so I'm going to send you over an image. It's going to be my Department of Insurance. Like, just say this exactly how it says it, and just send them over your contact card. And then from there, we're going to go. This is into the close. We're going to cover this part in the next video. Actually, let's cover the benefits in this video because there's a lot of objections in the close I want to go over and the application process. So we're going to go through the benefits in this video. So, all right, let me know when you receive that. You got it? All right, perfect. Yep. That's just want to see that way you can know who the agent you're talking to. You know, just make a joke like that or let them know. That's why we send them the credentials. I just do it real casually. Yeah, no big deal. But there's just a protocol here where I just have to send you over a copy of my Department of Insurance license just so that you have it for your records. Not like I'm trying to prove something. I just say it like, yeah, no big deal. It's just going to have my state license, my credentials. So, you know, I was background checked and fingerprinted, a picture of my face, my contact information, all that good stuff in there. Okay, sir. All right, perfect. That's in your text messages right now. And I typically text it to him like way earlier, like as soon as I know the conversation's going somewhere. But obviously, you can just send it right now if you haven't already sent it. And another important note, send it from your personal number. If you have an eSIM, send it from your personal number, not your business number that you will change eventually, right? All right, perfect. And then now I'm going to give you some information about the benefits that come with this type of plan, specifically for our veterans. Do you have a pen and paper handy, sir? All right, perfect. If they don't and they can't grab one, if they're like not on me, like, well, are you in a position where you could go grab one for me real quick, sir? If they're like not in a position to grab one and they're like seem really grumpy about doing that, like, okay, no big deal, sir. I'm just going to text you these terms I'm talking about and I'll read them aloud and explain what they mean. Okay. But say they grab a pen and paper. Like, all right, perfect. Let me know when you're ready. All right. So the first thing I'll have you write down, sir, is going to be immediate coverage. And immediate coverage simply means, and notice I'm going to do that with every one, but notice how I say it twice and I say it very loudly, clearly, right? So first is write down immediate coverage. Immediate coverage means that as soon as you make the first premium, you're covered day one. There's no 2-year waiting period or anything like that, like there are with most carriers. You can also write down locked in. Locked in simply means that the premium will never increase and the coverage amount for your daughter, Amanda, will never decrease. You can also write down tax-free. Tax-free simply means that the death benefit, living benefit, and cash value are one of the few things in life that surprisingly we don't have to pay Uncle Sam for. So there are absolutely zero taxes on these veteran plans for you or for your daughter, Amanda, one day. Okay, sir? Typically after like one of these, I'm going to check in like, okay, sir? Because sometimes you're just reading these off and they're not responding. You want to make it a little bit more conversational, right? So like, okay, does that make sense? Got it. All right. After that, you can write down you can write down living benefit. And living benefit is important to remember. This means that if God forbid you get a terminal illness or a severe accident where they say that you only have a year or two to live, you'll be able to access 50% of the benefit tax-free while you're still living, just to make that process as easy as possible. After that, you can write down cash value. And cash value simply means that your policy will accumulate cash value over time. So down the road, if you ever want to take money out of your policy, you always can at your own discretion or something like that, right? After that, and then with double accidental, I only quote double accidental if they're 75 or younger, because Americo, you can do double accidental if they're older, but a lot of times I'm using Corebridge or we're using Corebridge, and Corebridge will only do double accidental if they're 75 or younger. So just to not put myself in a corner and have to call them back and tell them they don't have the double accidental, if I have to switch carriers, I don't read double accidental if they're over 75. If you want to, and you know they're going to get approved with America, you can, if you want to add that in there. But with quoting double accidental on America, you do have to do it directly off of America's website, because here it does not show the double accidental rate like it does with Corebridge, for example. So Corebridge, you hit this little drop down and it shows you the double accidental rate. Again, if I'm quoting Corebridge, like say they have prostate cancer, I'm gonna go Corebridge, then I know that I can do double accidental. But if I don't know that for sure, and I don't know if I'm doing America or Corbridge or whatever I'm doing, and they're over 75, I just don't say it personally. But next, you can write down double accidental payout. And double accidental payout simply means that if your cause of death is any sort of accident, like a car accident, slip and fall, choking, drowning, if they're still working, I'll say like you get hurt on the job, you die on the job, any sort of accidental death that isn't from permanent or isn't from illness or natural causes, and the coverage amount would double. So, just for an example, say you have a $10,000 policy and God forbid you die in an accident, then Amanda, your daughter, would actually receive 20,000 instead of 10,000. Okay. And then, and another side note here too, I put in here in the script 10,000, double 20, whatever. It's a good round number. And you can just say that if you want. I typically at this point, I know the three packages I'm quoting, and I usually use the gold option as my example. So say I'm doing 10, 15, 20K, I'll do, so for example, if you have a $20,000 policy and God forbid you die in an accident, then Amanda would receive 40,000 instead of 20,000. And another thing I'm doing too, and this goes throughout the whole script really, but you're wanting to bring up the beneficiary as much as possible, right? That's the why, that's who they're doing this for. That's why they're paying this monthly premium, is to protect that person. So bring them up as much as possible to keep them fresh in their mind, especially before you're getting to the end and they're about to make a decision. And then lastly, write down permanent coverage. Permanent coverage simply means that this coverage will never expire on you. These are whole life policies specifically for veterans, so they don't expire at any age. Does that all make sense? All right, perfect, sir. So based on what you've told me here, and then we're going into the last section here, going over the numbers, we're getting the close. And that is what we're going to start with on the next video when we're going over the close and the application and all that good stuff.